On the 5th day of awesome, Everything is Awesome gave to me the second part of our interview with Mike from Doom Thugs podcast right here on awesomepodcast.com.
Awesome.
Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. 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 That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
No, you are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show.
Use your hands?
And this is the show. This is State. This is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And that is in the background.
Oh shit!
One of my co-workers and guy I've known since birth, Dave, Big Dave, as he's been referred to on this show. That's right, you've been talked about on this show numerous times.
I'm sure it's all glowing remarks.
And I'm recording a pre-intro to part 2 of our conversation with Mike from Doom Thugs. We get into sports, or we continue to talk sports. We get into the Doom Thugs origins, and we also, he starts interviewing me about my Erin McGathy interview that I did on episode 20. Go check it out if you have not listened to it yet. It was, I guess, awesome. I mean, everything is awesome, right? Anyway, so this is probably the only time you ever hear Dave on the airwaves, because he'll never agree to do an interview. Will you? Okay. So coming up on the other end is going to be Mike from Doom Thugs, right here on Everything is Awesome, only on awesomepodcast.com. I remember going to and I like watching hockey, but I wear Flyers gear all the time.
Yeah.
But I know nothing. I really know nothing about the sport. Like, I recently got into it.
Yeah.
When my kids were very young, and I don't have time to sit. It's one of those sports, just like baseball, which I love dearly.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not going to sit down and watch it all the time, because it's.
You got kids. You got stuff
I
to do.
got kids, and there's 80 games. Like, I'll catch a game here and there. But we went to a playoff game, I believe, a Flyers Penguins game.
Oh gosh.
Which they're always my favorite, because being now the Flyers and Penguins are like it's weird for me, because like, I'm a Steelers fan, and
Okay.
part of that might be because I wrestled a steel tip and had a whole gimmick of living in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is, like, they're not NFC. They're not. My number one rule is they're not NFC East, so I can root for them outside of Philly.
Yeah.
If they're not NFC East. And my number 2 rule is they're not NFC, so like, even more so, like, they're my number 2 team, because like, the only time I'll root against them is when they're playing the Eagles.
Right. I get that. That's like the perfect second team to have. Other league, totally separated.
Yeah. And I mean, because baseball, like, after the strike of 93, like, I stopped watching for years.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of like, I fell out of love with the sport. But I got back into it probably about a year or 2 before we won the World Series. So like 06, 07.
That's a good time.
Yeah, and I got back into it, and so for that reason, like, I have no ill will or love for the Pirates. They're just a team.
Yeah.
They're just there. But the Penguins are like, well, I knew it. Like, the reason I got into hockey is because I had an old neighbor who was a Penguins fan.
Okay.
And like, so I started watching hockey at his place. But like, I was like, well, I'm a Flyers fan. Like, I'm Philly. I'm going to root for Philly.
Right.
So like, I don't hate the Penguins, but I also don't like, I don't know. I have a weird thing with the Penguins. I would never buy any of their gear. Like, I buy Steelers gear.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about it, but I wouldn't buy Penguins gear.
Right.
But yeah, I always love those games, the Flyers Penguins, because it's just that turnpike,
charge.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
But
I like to watch them on television.
Oh, well, yeah. So I went to the Flyers Penguins playoff game, and like, walking to my car, me and my buddy saw 3 or 4 fights.
Right. It's nuts.
And like, I was that guy when I traveled for work. Like, I would like, going back to how this it's a Northeast mentality to be like, yo, fuck your team. I'm better than you.
Right.
I was traveling to Dallas for about a month, back and forth, during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I went down there, I said to myself, oh, fuck Dallas. This is what I want to do.
Right.
I packed all my clothes, my work clothes and whatnot. I was like, oh, let me get my Eagles jersey, let me get my Eagles hat. I got my Eagles fucking strap on my book bag. Let's do this. I want to start some shit.
Right.
I land in Dallas. I walk out all smug and shit. I'm like, can't wait till someone says something. And I think this was one of our good years too. So I was like, I can't wait till someone says something. Let them say something. I'll fucking knock them out. And I go to Dunkin' Donuts and I take my sunglasses off. I just smile. I was like, I'll get a coffee. And like staring at the dude wearing, like he was wearing something Cowboys too. I was like, it's going to happen. Right here at the Dunkin' Donuts. Nicest dude in the world.
Right.
Like, he's brought up, he's like, yeah, your team's good this year, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get my rent-a-car. And like, I drove to the hotel. I was like, reflecting, I'm like, I don't think I'm the good guy here.
No.
I think I'm wrong.
That's what I've heard about Dallas is like Eagles fans hate Dallas, but Dallas doesn't really give a shit.
No.
It's like their big rival in their mind is like Washington, and the Eagles are like secondary.
Yeah.
It's like how people from San Francisco hate Los Angeles, and Los Angeles just doesn't give a fuck about San Francisco.
Yeah. And it's and yeah, I mean, I guess like I think more people care about, like, I think New York hates us more than we hate New York.
Yeah, because we're all up here in the Northeast with our cold ass winters. We got shit to be pissed about. Like, we've been in the country. Like, our ancestors have deep roots. It's just, we're all crazy.
Yeah, it's I know that's probably like my lowest but highest point of being a sports fan. It was like just trying to go start shit and then
at least you tried.
It's just it was and being the guy who's like super shy, I was like, I mean, I wasn't gonna there was no way I was really gonna throw a punch, but like I just can't wait to start some shit. Like I have some I'll get verbal. Like everyone that listens to this show knows I'll talk, and I'll talk football and say how your team sucks all day long.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is funny that like it's the Northeast is very, I'm a Philadelphia fan and you're not gonna do anything, like we're gonna kick your ass.
Yeah. And I might just take a wild swing on you. Who knows? Like, look out for me, motherfucker. Sorry for cussing.
No, dude, that's what this show explicit tag is.
Yeah,
all
I saw the E on it earlier when I was listening, so it's like, all right, I'm gonna let some F-bombs fly. It's a Monday night.
Yes. So, what brought you to podcasting, or maybe I wasn't able to, and this might be the gimmick, is that the official podcast of DoomThugs.com, but like. So is that all the website is, or did you? Okay,
well,
okay.
All right. So here's let's
see the origin story here.
So what got me into podcasting was my first foray into it was Doug Loves Movies with Doug Benson. Okay. At the same time was Comedy Death Ray, now Comedy Bang Bang, and Nerdist. Those three I listened to. That's how I got into it. And the great thing about podcasting is like you realize like anyone can do it.
Yep.
It's just like, I'm going to do it. So in 2010,
oh wow,
I at first started off as this grand idea. Me and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Tammy, we decided we're going to make comic books. We're going to sell T-shirts. She's a talented artist. We're going to sell her art. And we're also going to have the podcast on the site to, because I love podcasting. It's something I want to do, and we could also plug the stuff we're selling. And the only thing we ended up doing, I mean, we almost had a full comic book back then, but in 2010, me and my friend Justin, I went out to him. I was like, listen, we're starting this podcast. You're the funniest guy I know. You have to be on it. He was like, anything you want to do, let's do it. So in 2010, we did about 13 episodes, I think, in our first run, and then he moved away. He had a kid, he had life and all that, and and it was like 13 episodes, not weekly. It was like one would come out here, whatever, and then it stopped for a few years, and then and then he moved back, and like the whole time I was thinking like, when I was doing that, it was so fun. It was like, because as a child, whenever I was in the car with my dad, he would have at 610 WIP on. So talk radio was like all I listened to as a kid. So it's very comforting to me. So podcasting was a natural transition to from listening to talk radio to that. And then I was like, you could go to school to become a broadcaster, which is what I was doing when I was in college. And then, fucking bust your ass and work your way up to hopefully someday get on the air to do what the network tells you to do. Or you could just podcast and do whatever you want. So I was like, we did this podcast, then he had to stop. So then I was like, he moved back into town. I was still in town. I was like, we're going to do it. So 110 weeks ago at this point.
Okay.
Episode 110 came out yesterday. We haven't missed a week. 110 weeks ago. Nice. We were just like, let's start it up. And then I started buying more and more equipment. Now I have like a mixer and all this stuff. And it was just a beautiful thing. And then my friend Harrison looked at our website and was like, guys, this looks like shit. He was like, let me fix your website. And we were like, all right, you fix the website, you could be on the show. So he fixed the website. Now he's on the show. And it was just it's sometimes it's tough to find a creative outlet, It's like, you want to be funny, you like making people laugh, but how do you do it? And like, podcasting was always the route for me. Like, it's like I could put out exactly what I want. And the good thing is it goes on iTunes, which is the same platform that, everyone uses.
Yes.
So it's like you're on the same, to me, being able to go on iTunes and search for my show and it comes up on the same place you could search and find, before they separated podcasts and music, like the same place you could find 50 Cent. We're on the same website. You know what I mean? It always felt so cool. And like to play it through the car and you could see your name on it always felt so great. Like it's instantly rewarding. And it's like then your friends start telling you that they listen and they're like, oh, I really like it. And nothing feels better than that, man. To me anyway. Yeah. Like that feedback is always so great. And it's like the feedback is coming from something that you created from the ground up. It's not like you're on someone else's, like when you're podcasting, it's you 100%. And it's just the best.
Yeah. I mean, I said it earlier, but like we are like you're my Patronus. Cause I grew up not listening to Whip, but I grew up listening to Stern.
Yeah,
And my dad was a big Stern guy, and then when I started driving, and I would listen to Stern when I could. I was more of a afternoon drive guy, so started off with Opie and Anthony. Eventually became Kid Chris, and he was my guy who I thought he was going to be the next Stern.
What's he doing today?
He's doing radio. He's I forget where he is, but he jumped to a few different places once he got fired from Philly.
Because I remember when 94.1 changed from the rock station to, it was like they tried to do the talk radio
Free
rap.
FM. Yeah, that was my I loved it. It was gold. I loved it. Was I think Stern was there for a little bit during the Free FM years.
Yeah.
But it was like, for Philly at least, it was
Danny Bonaducci, right?
Yeah, Danny Bonaducci. I forgot about him.
My friend Justin shook his hand at like the St. Patrick's Day parade.
He did that handshaking thing.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. Bonaducci. I mean, obviously, eventually, Opie and Anthony kind of took over that morning slot.
Whip them out Wednesdays, baby.
Yeah. Barsky in the morning. I liked.
Yeah.
Matt and Huggy.
Yes, I forgot about that.
And Matt and Huggy is my first podcast. That's how my producer set it up. Because when I first started doing podcasting, it was
you started like a decade ago, right?
Yeah, 9 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so just a couple years before you, really.
Oh yeah, that's crazy too.
I mean,
2010 that long ago now.
Yeah, that's 6 years ago. I was only 3 years ahead of you. And yeah, we started in 07, I believe. Yeah, 07. I mean, the show, I guess I broke my ankle and I was looking for something to do. The guy who was producing it was looking, he's like, hey, I'm looking to do this like weird little side project. Like, if you're interested in talking, let me know. And I was like, fuck, dude, you know who I am.
Right.
Like,
right.
yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. And he produced the show as a Matt and Huggy show. So we were 2 hours, intro, talk for a bit, break, come back, we talk sports, break, we come back, we talk something else, break, we come back, we have our guest. Very formatted, a show that like I said, like your show, at least in episode 21, is very similar to that, where like it cuts to a commercial and you do something, you cut to a commercial, you do something, you cut to a commercial, play a game. So like that like hits home to me as you know, just my origin story.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so Matt and Huggy were like a huge influence on my show at one point. Yeah, I mean, like I same reason as you, is it's comfort. Like I love talk radio. I can't tell you any of the band since maybe the early mid 90s, something like that. Cause even then, even before I listened to talk radio on a regular basis, like I wasn't even ever really into music. Like my first, I believe I was talking to, I think it was either Erin McGathy or Dan Drago. I was talking to one of them about the first album I bought, and it was
McGathy.
Oh yeah, dude,
best.
That was such a fun interview, and
that's so cool you got to interview about.
I'm so glad, because I hate when sometimes I hate bringing it up. Because I talk about it all the time, but it's still like my highlight episode.
I would never stop talking about it.
But B, B, and it's like sometimes I'll bring it up and like not everyone knows who she is, and I'm like, I have to explain it. I'm like, well, now I kind of feel bad that like I have to explain who she is. Like, what if she comes back and listens to like one of these other episodes? I'm like, listen, you're like, I love Erin McGathy. She's such a great podcaster. Is you know, a huge, ever since, I mean, she's the third person I started listening, well, not the third person I started listening to, but like out of the list of people that are my people I admire, Kevin Smith, Aisha Tyler, and Erin McGathy, like out of those three, she was the most recent person I started listening to. But like, I would say probably I pull a lot of inspiration from, as far as like, it's very like, This Feels Terrible is very conversational based.
Is that what you started listening to? This Feels Terrible? Was that your first McGathy exposure?
Harmontown was my first.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was my first McGathy exposure, and I brought it up. I think I tried to bring it up in my intro. What I love about that episode that I recorded is that before we connected on Skype, I hit record, and I recorded myself sitting there basically doing a pep talk to myself.
Right.
and I edited it a little bit, because there is like maybe like a section that's like a solid 3 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
So I edited that down, but for the most part, like it's all like real time that I'm playing. And then I edit it so that the intro plays, and then, you know, I obviously go live with the show.
Yeah.
And it is like, there is a clear cut difference of like nervous Kev and podcast Kev.
Yeah.
But podcast Kev also like prepped the intro for the first time ever in his Everything Is Awesome career.
Right.
And like I stumbled over it a little bit of what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I fell in love with we have notes for a web series that is fully inspired by their D&D segment, specifically her character, Nadine. Because I love like the adventure, and like that character. I fell in love with it, and so yeah, Harmontown was my first exposure, and then I didn't really listen. I listened to like an episode or two of This Feels Terrible, while she was on Harmontown, but she didn't have many of them at that point.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't doing many of them, I should say.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I don't know, there was something about it that didn't really click. But then she started Human Conversation.
Wayne Fetterman.
Yep. And that's like one of my favorite podcasts, because again, it goes down to like, it's just two friends talking.
That's such a great mix too. Like
yes,
I love Wayne Fetterman.
Yeah.
Him and Erin McGathy.
Excellent mix.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone hits it on the head when they write in. It's like listening to like siblings kind of like talk, or whatever it is, that their chemistry is too perfect for that show.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was after that, like, obviously after her divorce, she started doing This Feels Terrible again. So that's when I started listening to it. I was like, all right, well, I really like Human Conversation. Let me listen to like the show that's kind of like mine.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it because I think, and I mean, she's in a happy relationship now, but whatever it was with when she was with Dan, like A, she wasn't doing This Feels Terrible on a regular basis, and B, I don't think it was authentic, and that's something that Bernardo brought up in an earlier episode of after the Philadelphia Podcast Fest when I interviewed him. Like that's actually like a really important factor that I never even really thought of. That thank God, I guess I am like that's being authentic clearly makes a difference now that I think about it. Like listening to what with Dan, This Feels Terrible, and without Dan, This Feels Terrible. There's a clear cut difference in that show, and I mean,
some of that might come from like if you've ever been in a relationship that you feel like failing. It's almost like you're being inauthentic with yourself because you want it to work out, so you put on this veneer of like, but it is some people can see through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I love that happened, and I'm really hoping that I can get her back on again. Because
when you had her on, was she in Ireland?
Yeah. Was she in Ireland at that point? No, she was back here in the States because I probably talked back and forth with her and the person doing her booking. For 3 weeks or so. Because they were planning her This Feels Terrible tour.
Right.
So they were back in LA when we were planning it. So she was probably in LA. I think she was in LA when we recorded, because I think we recorded the end of June, right before she went on tour. But yeah, I mean that's something like and case in point, like that's probably an interview that should have been more Q&A, more like let's talk about like you and whatnot. But we went off after a half hour just chatting, talking about the 90s, because her and I are the same exact age. She was born in December of 84. I was July of 84. So like we talked 90s big time.
July what were you born? Sorry.
July 13th.
Okay. I'm 22nd.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know a lot of July people. My best friend in the world is July 12th.
Okay.
July 12th, 83. So he's always a year and a day older than me. Always. It's weird how that calendar works. And then like another good friend of ours, he's like July 9th or 10th. I worked with someone for a little while that was also July 13th, but like a decade later almost, which was really weird.
Yeah. It's weird how many people I know now that were born in the 90s. It's insane. Like,
oh my, right?
You should be a baby.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense you're an adult person talking to me.
I have so she's nothing family wise to me, but her mom I call my aunt because my mom and her mom are best friends. But
definitely. Do you think that's a Philly thing, by the way? Because some people think that's weird. I grew up with it. Yeah. I do meet some people that are like, why do you call him your uncle? He's not your uncle. He's like, well, he's my dad's best friend. He's my uncle. Like,
is that? I just kind of assumed that was the thing everywhere.
Me too.
Oh,
but
wow.
I have met people that were like, you're weird. Maybe they're weird.
Yeah.
Screw them.
Yeah, they're weird. Fuck them. They probably call it a sub too. Not a hoagie.
Yeah, fuck them.
But yeah, so I mean, she's 21. She turned 21 in the last couple of months. Yeah. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I remember when she was a baby and she would say, Kev, up. And like, I would hold her as a baby. And I was like, I mean, I'm 11 years older, so I was probably around 11 at the time, 11 or 12. I'd hold her and we would she'd cuddle me and I'd take a nap with her on the couch. Cause so it's weird. Like I remember, and like 5 years ago when she turned 16, I was talking to her on the phone and she's like, yeah, I'm 16 now. I'm like, bullshit. You're 16. You're like 10, right?
Right. You can't be 16. If you're 16, you know how old that makes me? Yeah. Doesn't work out.
Yeah. And it is insane how many people I know. And I don't where I work, which, where I work. Cause we said it before at least I edited it out before.
It's secret.
It's secret. It's the secret place. It's the CIA. But I work with mainly older people, which makes sense in the type of work I'm in.
Yeah.
But there's also as many older people as there is. There's also younger people. Like there's not many 30-year-olds where I work.
Wow.
But there's a lot of like 50 and up and like 28 and younger.
That's so strange.
Like it's, and I probably even mentioned to say 28 is me being really generous. It might be even 25 and younger.
Right.
And it is just crazy. Like, cause none of them, I work in IT. So like I'm the IT person in that agency, and they like none of them know. Like the 20-year-olds don't, the 50-year, no one knows IT there. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, I thought the millennials would catch me a break, but no.
I thought they were born with it, hardwired.
Yeah, it is insane. That like, you know, it's luckily I guess no matter what generation, I'll always have a job because people just don't care about technology at some point.
Some people just want someone else to do it.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, there is so many 90s kids. Like, and I consider myself a 90s kid because I actually grew up in the 90s.
Yeah.
But
I was
like
born in 87, so
yeah, like
my first memory is in 92. So from 92 on I was plugged in.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 84. I may have some, like I said, I think that WCW thing I went to was maybe 89.
Yeah.
If it was not the 90s, it was 89. But like everything I know is 90s. Like,
Yeah,
I consider
100%.
myself a 90s kid.
Yes.
And so that's what Erin McGathy and I talked about. That was the first half of our conversation.
That's great.
And then we went on and talked, like, she dropped some knowledge about her boyfriend, like, explaining Irish fairies to her. And I said, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And, like, they're, like, it's almost like a religious belief, like, Irish fairies and the leprechaun and stuff. And, like, we had, like, a 30-minute conversation about Ireland at that point.
Yeah.
And, like, it wasn't until about a week or two ago, I was like, I wonder if I could email them and say, listen, Aaron, I know you're busy. We can talk again later, like whenever you have time. I want to talk to your boyfriend. Like, I feel like A, I just want to listen to his Irish accent.
Yeah.
B, I want to just hear all his stories about the Irish fairy.
Fairy, yeah.
Yeah, like that sounds amazing to me.
Absolutely.
I feel like he would be an interesting conversation as well, and just talking about the Irish folklore and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know. I could listen to people from Europe that speak English with accents, probably Australians and South Africans too. I could just listen, especially about wrestling. A lot of podcasts I listen to are people from Ireland or England talking about wrestling, and I'm almost positive that would translate to Australians or South Africans or wherever else they speak accented English.
My son played soccer last year, maybe. It was awful. It was an awful experience. Like, don't take a 3-year-old to soccer. It's awful.
Oh my goodness.
He said he wants to play soccer this year. I said no. It's when you're 8, we'll go play soccer when you can be a person.
Right.
But the coach. So we played for Falls Township, and they hire. For at least like the real little ones, like legitimate coaches, and they were like, the dude we had was from Ireland. Like, he had an Irish accent. He must have been like either here for the summer for something. I don't know what it was, but he was here for the summer. He coached my kid, and like he'd talk, and I'd just be like, can you teach me to talk like you? Like, I'm 100% Irish, but I can't sound like you. Like, I can't repeat. Like, teach me your ways.
All right.
Like, I love a good accent.
Hell yeah.
So Doom Thugs started out in 2010.
2010.
Oh,
and there's like a 13 episode run that I still have on an old computer, which I might release someday.
Oh, good on you. Never lose that. Lose that. Because I have bits and pieces from my past shows, and the more quote unquote recent ones, which is like maybe the last 5 years, I have pretty much all of it. But like some of the original stuff, and specifically like this show we did called Creepcast, which is what we did after 18 weeks of Happy Hour with Steel Tip. It we did that, and I lost all that audio.
Ah,
So going through your feed, I did notice that before the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, which just only makes sense because you've been doing this now for 110 weeks, as you said earlier. You've done at least, I saw one, maybe two other live shows. So when did you do your show live, and where did that become a possibility for the first time?
well, so on our show we play the second half of the show we'll play a game normally. One game, one of the co-hosts, Harrison, invented. It's called Guess That Movie, where he'll like read clues off, and then you have to buzz in and guess a movie. And
I like that game.
throughout the show, whoever would beat us, because Justin and I would often win. If you beat us, you got a spot in the Tournament of Champions. So once we had 4 contestants, we decided to run a live show, and where we actually ran it was in my basement in my house. Like,
Oh, okay.
we cleared everything out. We hung up curtains, and we put all this seating in, and it looked legit, like a real stage. It looked great. I could probably send you some pictures or something.
That is indie at its heart.
Dude,
I
it
love
was so DIY, so beautiful. Like, so many people came out and showed support. Like, my parents were here. It was fucking great. My aunt and like all our friends and stuff, and we had like a packed house, and we did this show in front of these people, and it was like all love. But it was like that was easy because that was like I was a little nerve-wracking, but it was still it's home base. And then a couple months later, we get because we just joined Philadelphia Podcasting Society pretty recently, like after the last podcast fest, but before the meetup. Were you at the meetup at Tattooed Moms?
I didn't go to the meetup. I wanted to go.
That was huge.
But yeah, I missed out.
You met Brian. You know Brian. You've had him on your show from Full Belly Labs. Yeah. So we made some good connections there. We saw the Steele family from the Empire.
Oh, yeah, I love them.
Good people. Good people.
Yeah, I see. I made all these. Well, the Steel Empire I made through just the Facebook page.
Yeah.
And same. I mean, really with everyone.
Yeah.
But like you and This Makes Me Happy podcast, and I think someone else, a few others at the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, and like I mean, I love that group. It is it's. Even though there's a lot of self-promotion going on in that group, it's still just very supportive. Like, I know my listenership is up because it's just everyone there supporting one another.
100%. That is such a great group. Like I mean, it is a lot of promotion, but that's what we have to do as podcasters. We're our own promotion teams. So if we don't get the word out, no one will. But it's like, if you ever have a question or anything, everyone there is so quick to like just open to help you out. It's great. But yeah, so our first live show was in the basement, and then we saw the thing come out like, hey, if you want to be a part of the 4th annual Philadelphia Podcast Festival, send us an email or whatever. So we sent it in, and then we got it back, and it was like, all right, you're in. And then it was like, holy shit, this is real. Like, this is a real live show. Like, they're going to be strangers there.
Yeah.
So, and then it was like, up until like it was like I was cool with it until like it wasn't bothering me until like August 1st. And then I was like, shit, this shit is real. Like this, like in my head, this was like, this is our first outside of our comfort zone step.
Yeah.
Like we have this bubble here built, and it's beautiful. I love all our fans and everything. And the live show was in my bed. So it was always safe. This is our first step out of our safety net to see if we have, the fucking balls to stand up here. And Nathan and Tegan are great, and they're so awesome. They bust their ass to get that festival. And I mean, this year was in multiple locations. It was nuts. And you were on the first Sunday, right?
Yeah, I was the first Sunday of the fest.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I actually. The comic you had on your show, what's his name? I forget.
Garrett Smith.
Garrett.
Yeah.
I actually saw him like last summer open up for Howard Kramer at Johnny Brenda's in Philadelphia.
Oh,
it was
nice.
so nuts that I saw him come out. I was like, I said that to him afterwards. I was like, "What?" It was awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I've known him for years. If you were there, so you heard the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a good guy, and that's the first time I've seen him do stand up, which makes me a bad friend. And but yeah, I mean, he crushed it, literally, like crushed a mouse.
I forgot about that dead ass mouse.
R.I.P. Mr. Mouse. R.I.P. Which I think I can safely say, I can go on record and say that this Kev right here, he doesn't know what the future holds at New York Comic Con, but I'm going to predict the future that we did not kill a mammal at New York Comic Con during our live show.
That's great. Like New York, that's a whole different ball of worms.
Yeah, it's so same. So you were saying the same, or I'm saying the same thing as you were just saying, like the comfort zone, like the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. Even though I've done a live show before, I was very supported in the fact that I was probably drunk. I was in my 20s, so like I wasn't as self-conscious. I mean, I was, but I guess I'm even more self-conscious, but I'm also willing to take the risk because, for me, like I consider the first half of my show, which is me standing up and talking for 20 minutes, a failure. That was a complete bomb. But I learned something like that. Like, I believe in, you can't not do something because you fear that no one's going to like it or someone says it's going to be bad or whatever.
You got to trust your instincts. If you think you have good instincts about what you think is good, then you got to do it.
Yeah. And I know that the beginning of my show could have gone a lot better. And it was a lot of nerves in me because I felt like the show still rested on my shoulders, even though I had a co-host and I did not utilize him correctly. And talking to Garrett, like we both agreed, like as soon as I brought O out, like the show found itself.
That's when I came in. So I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. So
the entire time I was there, it was great.
Yeah, and that's my strength. My strength is talking to people. My strength is not being a comedian at all.
Yeah.
So like we're adjusting for that for the New York Comic Con. Like I'm gonna stand up and do a monologue, but I'm gonna tell a story. I'm not gonna try to crack wise.
Not like work the crowd or anything.
Yeah, like that's not my gig. Like I'm not a comedian.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean Philadelphia Podcast Fest was out of my comfort zone, but this New York thing is even more so out of my comfort zone because like I don't have a crowd to bring with me. And granted, I only brought two. Like I think there was 3 people there that I knew.
Wow,
that were coming.
You had a full room too. That's awesome.
Let me tell you. Like I mean, I knew. So there was 3 people there that I brought with me. One of them being my co-host's wife. The other one being my fiance and her friend. So that's the 3 people. Who was my first guest? He brought his girlfriend. She was out there. Garrett, I don't think brought anyone. So. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of nice seeing that many people there because I didn't really know anybody there. There was this girl there that was sitting in, like if you were sitting at the stage, she was sitting to my left, and like she was there for the whole day. She was a guest on This Makes Me Happy, the live version of the podcast.
Yeah.
I ended up being a guest on that podcast, and after that I was a guest on that podcast. Like I ended up talking to her for a little bit.
Yeah.
And like she wasn't there to see a show. She was there because she loves podcasts.
Oh, really?
And like she told me that, and I was like, fucking mind blown.
Yeah.
Like that's great that you're here supporting podcast. Like I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought everyone that was going to be there because they were there to see another show. And like, I was lucky enough to be booked at 2 in the afternoon and like, just have, people from the last show, people for the next show.
Yeah.
Like kind of have things like, kind of like you got there late for my show, early for Brian's show.
Yeah.
And I lucked out to have you as an audience member because whatever. Going into New York, I have, as of now, I know there is 4 people attending that event.
Okay.
And I'm trying not to like think about that because like at the end of the day, and I was talking to and this hasn't aired yet, but I was talking to the guys from the After 6 podcast.
Okay.
Who are Podern Family on Twitter.
I see that hashtag a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a broader version of the Philadelphia Podcast Society, and whereas it's not it can be as loving, it can be as not loving. I luck out and I just kind of associate and talk to the people that are just as loving. One of them is David Steele from A Quest for Magic and Steel.
Yeah.
But you know, these guys after 6, that's where I met them from, and we were chatting, and like we were talking, and they said, if we did a live show, we just want to do a live show. Like, we think it would be a cool experience. If there was one person there, if there was 0 people there, we want to give a fuck.
Yeah.
And like, that's the mentality I'm trying to go into with New York Comic Con, because there's going to be, like, I'm not going to have the same audience there. It's a pay show. Like the people I hooked up with. And like, that's like the only reason like it's happening is because I was like, that's kind of how it has to happen.
Yeah.
And for people listening, this all happened in the past, so
Right.
you know, it probably sold out. It was great. But like, we're doing something even a little bit more different, but than we did there. But like, I really like doing the late night format for my live show. Like,
it's a good. It works. Like, it's good for the live.
Yeah. And about a week after the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, I read this article from Jason Tabris on Uprocks, and he's a guy that I follow on Twitter. He follows me. He used to do a podcast. I tried to get him on my show, and he doesn't think he's that interesting anymore to be on a show. So he was my first no that I got, but that's fine. Like, I totally respect it. Like, he's obviously, he's a journalist, and like, in this day and age, you got to hustle to be a journalist. So like, I get it. And but he wrote this article for Uprocks about late night and how it needs like a revolution, and how, like, you know, why does it have to take place at your stale desk? And like, he's writing all these things. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, that's so cool that like, this is what I'm trying to do with my live show is turn it into, like, I guess, like a late night revolution. And talking to my co-host Mike about it, I'm like, you know, I'm not foolish enough to think that we're going to be these guys that changed the face of late night for this generation. But like, totally, we could be like, we could start it. Like, we could totally be and this is my entire podcasting career, is like, we could be like, okay, we'll be on this show, or we'll see this show, and we'll totally go and make a success out of it on our own. Right. Like, I've had tons of co-hosts that have gone on and done their own thing, and before, probably like the last year I did podcasting before my year or 2 break before coming back to this show. Yeah. Like, before that, I had very mediocre success, but that was fine. Like, I was happy with what I had. And then I had like a big success for like a year or 2 before I kind of like just needed a 2-year break. Yeah. And like, this is like, I'm back to not caring about numbers and back to like just being. Yeah, you'll drive yourself nuts. Like, yeah, like, I'm doing it for me. Like, that's who I'm doing it for. And like, I don't know if you listen to Party of One, but that's Jeff's podcast, Jeff Stormer. Yeah. Part of the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. Yeah. And he kicked it off. Yeah, he kicked it off, right? Yeah. Yeah, he kicked it off. And I was listening to one of his episodes a couple months ago, and he said something that like really clicked for me. And he said that he started his podcast so that he could play tabletop RPG games with people. And I was like, holy shit, like, I started this podcast just so I could have conversations with people. Like, that's all I care about. Like, right. Yeah. Like, this last 2 hours that we've talked is like, if no one else listened to it, I'd be okay with that. Right. Like, I feel better as a like, conversing with people is great. Yeah. Meeting new people. Like, yeah. And like, there's not one person that I've talked to on this podcast in the last now 40 plus weeks that like, I don't consider somewhat of a friend, no matter what level that means. Like, this is the same as, I mean, I'm drinking beer obviously right now, but like, this is the same as us sitting at a bar and talking. Right. Like, that's all this show is supposed to be, is like, well, at least the pre-recorded show is supposed to be like a microphone at a bar and us sitting around talking. Yeah. And like, I don't know, it is like the first time in 9 years of podcasting that I feel really happy about doing it. I don't feel stressed doing it. Doing the live show is obviously more stressful, as you know. Yeah. Because you do have to. There's an expectation and I don't know if my expectation is to make people laugh necessarily, but because I think the late night version of my show, at least for me, is like it's the same principle of having an interesting conversation. Yeah. So I don't know if my goal is to make people laugh necessarily. I mean, I booked a comic so that people would laugh, but like in New York, we're having a musical guest on. Oh, that's awesome. So like we are having like my other guest is an improv actor and whatnot, and but I don't like, at this point it's aired. We probably didn't do an improv bit, and she didn't do a set. We played a game called Heads Up on it's like headbands, but for your iPhone.
Oh, is that the Ellen game?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, now that's what I'm planning.
Right.
I'm assuming it happened. If you're listening to this, I'm assuming you can go back and listen to episode 38 and see that we actually played that. Yeah, it's just kind of like I just want to have interesting conversations, even at my live shows. So it's not necessarily about making people laugh, even though in this instance maybe it should be, especially since they're paying. But it's more so to have fun for me, and so is that how you approach your live show? Like your first live show that was out of your comfort zone? Was it more so about making the audience happy or making you happy?
I was looking at it in terms of like, all right, so the Philadelphia Podcasting Society, they're taking a risk in putting me out there. I want to show them that they made the proper decision. You know what I mean? I want to be invited back. I want to show that them saying, yeah, be on the fucking festival was something they're going to be happy about. So, so I wanted to put on the best show for the people in the room possible. Yeah. And my biggest fear, first off, was that there was going to be nobody in the room and it was going to be just me like an idiot. But then, I mean, we had a good turnout of people that came, like people that we know, people that have been on the show, people that know the show. And then there was also, like people you don't know there, which is a whole other awesome thing. Yeah. And then, so when the show started, I know I was going a million miles an hour. I was so nervous. But then as soon I had the wireless mic because we had like 4 mics, so I was able to walk around the room. But as soon as I heard someone laugh, like as soon as I made the whole room laugh, I was like, you know what? This is good stuff. And then I was able to kind of settle in. And then really, that was the first time I've ever been in a room in front of people with a microphone, and it felt great. I loved it. Like I felt like I was in total control of the room. Like I had people at attention. I made them laugh, and it was great. But
felt like Shawn Michaels,
dude, 100%, 100%. Like they were following me on the story that I was telling, and it felt right. But yeah, to answer your question, I was looking for this show to perform for the audience. Like my biggest thing was to prove that for the Philadelphia Podcast Society to put on this DelCo act, which could be considered hyper localized, which in a way it is, but we had to prove to them, and to a smaller extent us, that we can go outside of DelCo and still perform and still make people laugh and make people glad they came out, which I feel like we did. And I heard you saying that you're going to do one of the shows at Bridge Set.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's all. Yeah.
So are you doing one of them or?
I told them after we did our show and we were talking to Nathan Teagan and we were just thanking him so much, and I told them anything they need, just reach out to us, and they said Bridge Set was thinking about running live podcasts out of there, and I said if you need us, hit us up. We're not that far away.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they were supposed to have one just the other night as the date of this recording.
Yeah.
Because I think he said it was going to be the 3rd Thursday of every month.
Okay.
But it's now I'm a completist, so I won't listen to your live show in Philly for probably a couple weeks.
Right. I get that.
as I start from the beginning.
Yeah.
But just talking to you, I can already from listening to your show. B, talking to you, I could tell that like your live shows are going to be something I would be into.
Right.
Like I just something that I think you should pursue more of, because you obviously feel good about it.
Yeah.
B, I mean, and I had the same conversation with Nathan Teagan after mine. I was let me know. Even like I will be involved with as much or as little as you want me involved.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
And I'd say a year or two before the first Philadelphia Podcast Fest, I was doing my show, Happy Hour. I had dropped the with steel tip part, but it was just Happy Hour. I was also a contract co-host for the Stabcast. We were doing live broadcast through Stickcam, which was a huge like streaming service back in the day.
Yeah, I remember Stickam.
Yeah,
I remember the email saying they were folding.
Yep. And I remember my buddy sent me a text because he got a text from the program director saying we're done, and what a train wreck that ended up being. But
I that was the first. I didn't know websites could just stop at that point. You know what I mean? Like before that was the first website that I was involved with. That was just like, we're done.
Yeah, it was such a weird circumstance to be involved with, and I tried to follow along, going to where the program director went to the other streaming services, and it just nothing was ever as good as Stickam in my opinion as far as live stream until Twitch. Like Twitch seems like, I haven't done it yet, but Twitch seems like a nice venue.
People love Twitch, yeah.
Yeah, if you're into live streaming, whether it's video games or doing like they have talk shows and stuff, like. Yeah. It seems like a good, viable place. Like YouTube still isn't like go-to place for live streaming.
Right.
It seems like it's Twitch and Facebook. You know?
And like Twitch, I'm also not involved with it, but I notice it and like hear about it and I'm positive about it. It seems like if you build your audience on Twitch, Twitch will reward you for doing that and like give you a sponsorship or whatever. So it's always nice to see that. Like if you put in the work and you build something, someone will give you a nod.
Yeah, and that's like Stickam kind of did that. I mean, I don't think they did it financially for a little bit, then they moved away from that model.
Yeah.
But they did reward you with featured time and which meant an audience, which meant you could get your own sponsors.
Yeah.
I don't know why we started talking about live streaming. That's the great part about this show is that we just go on wild tangents and I forget. But yeah, I mean, I did live streaming for a while and
you actually got a cease and desist. Am I right? Was that from Stickam?
No, Stickam. Now, so I feel there could have been a conspiracy. Okay. And I haven't stated this before out loud. But,
okay.
So we got a cease and desist from AMC.
Yeah.
The channel that hosts The Walking Dead and The Talking Dead.
Yes.
And we did a show called The Walking Dead Zomcast, which was after that cease and desist retitled The Zomcast. And for using the name of the show in our show, which there was a million podcasts that had The Walking Dead in their title, so I didn't really understand it.
Right.
But So Stickam sent me an email, said, we want to feature your Walking Dead show. Like, we want to make you the Talking Dead of Stickam. And I was like, of course.
Hell
like,
yes.
I'm not going to say no to that. Like, I'll be your Chris Hardwick.
Fuck yes.
And that lasted for a couple weeks, and then we got the cease and desist. But my buddy was telling me that he heard that they were testing the waters of a Walking Dead show on Stickam because AMC wanted to do something with Stickam.
Okay.
So I don't know how true that is.
Right. They just
means nothing.
Right. They sent you out there to test the waters and pulled you back in.
Yeah, which I'm telling you, if AMC did The Talking Dead on Stickam, that audience wasn't going to get a conversation about Badass Carl,
right?
Because that's all we talked about at the end of our show was we had a theory that that Carl in the comic books, if they were to bring Daryl into the comic books, that Daryl was Carl from the future.
Okay.
But yeah, because Carl in the comic books, and I haven't read, I'm way behind in the comic books, but he turned into a badass at some point.
And was Daryl wasn't in the books originally, right?
Yeah, and I don't think unless he's in there now. I haven't. The last comic I read was like in the mid 100s.
Okay.
Like maybe 120 something, and he's not in there as of then. He's the best character on that show in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
I love The Walking Dead. But so you know what? Somehow live shows came from Bridge Set Sound. So we are doing the November spot for Bridge Set Sound, November 17th. And I mean I mean, I'll put a word in for you if I have to. Like, I don't like. I'm pretty sure. Like, this is like the creative. I think every creative person is like this. And I've been like this since my wrestling days. Like, I know, like, we had to be the bottom of the barrel of the podcast fest, in my opinion. Like,
I feel that way, definitely.
yeah, like, there's no way that we were that good. But like, I mean, I did get some praise, and obviously we were invited back to do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's something that I think I would love to be doing as a group with the Philadelphia Podcast Society, even if it's in a smaller function, like on a regular basis. Like I would love to see, monthly sets of like, hey, we're going to do this month, we're going to have one podcast, or this month we're going to have 2 or 3 podcasts putting on a show for the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon or something.
Yeah.
I think that would be great, just to, if anything, get the word about podcasting out there.
I agree.
It's something for you and I that's happening in about 10 days is International Podcast Day, and we can kind of probably leave on this note. But International Podcast Day is September 30th. So for all the super friends out there that are listening to this show, you've already accepted my challenge of doing a podcast or finding a way to do something, or if you are a podcaster, you've done something different. And that, so I'll leave you with this is like in 10 days, I'm sure you're going to be doing at least one podcast. You're already a podcaster, but Mike, with Doom Thugs Pod, do something different than that's out of your realm.
Okay.
Of comfort. Find something that's not what you normally do. And I think that's what podcasters should be doing for International Podcast Day, is doing something different, making some awareness about it. And if you're not doing a podcast, if you're a listener, I think you mentioned this earlier. Probably this is a 2-parter episode, so probably in part 1, you mentioned like everyone can do a podcast, and I believe that. There's a lot of arguments that people will make that not everyone should be doing a podcast, but I say fuck it, everyone should do a podcast.
There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, and don't do it because you want a huge audience and you want to make money. Don't do it for that reason. Do it because you'll have a small audience at the very least. You'll have someone that wants to listen to your bullshit story. I'm probably one of those guys. If it's just you and a best friend sitting around talking, I'll listen to that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so happy that there's so much recorded material, and this is just me being a sappy old man now, but there's so much of me recorded that my kids will have forever. My kids, like, if you think about people you've lost in your life, you will always remember what they look like because you have pictures, but, like, I don't remember what my grandmother sounds like at all. I don't remember what my aunt sounds like at all. But now my kids will always know what I sound like, and like hi from the grave, kids, because like they'll always have this recording. They'll have all these recordings of their dad being a dumb motherfucker on radio, or podcasting, and I think that's great, and it's something that like I really need to sit down, and I want to, like, all my family that's around right now, I want to sit down and record with them, because in 10 years, God forbid, I don't have someone in my life anymore. I want to be able to sit down and like listen to that recording and just hear their voice,
always hear them laugh. Like, you don't realize how important that stuff is. And
like it's something that I've been talking about for years to do, and I haven't done yet, and it's starting to hit close to home. But like it's something that I just do it for yourself, do it for your kids, do it for your family. Like I think everyone should be doing a podcast. So even if
can I say, like,
go ahead.
Like, I recently found a journal from my grandfather, right?
Okay.
And most of it was like tire pressure readings of his tire. You know what I mean? There's but some of it was like actual written stuff from when they went on like a cross country trip, like, and it was even the time that shit, it was fascinating. So even like having all this, like you said, all this recorded material of me that will live on way beyond me, hopefully the government doesn't shut us all down for some reason, burn all the tapes, but it's you don't realize 2 generations away from you how even the smallest minute details about your life will be so enlightening and fascinating to the people that come after you, long after you're gone. Like, who will give a fuck about your tire pressure readings? You know what I mean? It's like it's so important to leave stuff for the future, because if not, then who are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's I never really thought of myself as that guy that was like, oh, I need to be known, and like I have this huge fear of death, and this is listen to my Erin McGathy and I talked about it, and I don't think we solved it. I don't think we solved why I have a big fear of death.
Yeah. But
I have this big fear of death, and it's I don't know if it's like because I don't really have that urge to leave a piece of me behind for everyone to know and love forever.
Right.
But it is it is become really important to me to be like, let me do this podcast and like. Even, I mean, I'm glad that the stuff that I did 9 years ago doesn't really exist anymore. Like I can't find the files anywhere, and that's fine because that was like shock jock Kev.
Right.
And that's not what I want to be remembered for. Like that's not who I am.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It got me to here, but it's also like I don't really look at that with pride anymore.
Right.
Like this, like the last 40 plus weeks of this show is like, yeah, listen to it, kids. Like I don't care. Like, listen to it when you're 10 years old. I don't care how much daddy is cursing. Like, this is your dad. This is something that was important to him. This is, an interesting conversation for 2 hours. We talked to this, to Mike, who we met for 5 minutes at a bar.
Yeah.
And we had a 2-hour conversation. We have a lot in common. He says it every week. Everyone's a Patronus, but like motherfuckers are Patronus to Kev. Like I think it's just wildly important to have, even if you're not going to air it, record, and like you can download an app on your phone. I use when I do stuff like bits and commercials on my phone. I use VRP 7 on iOS, Voice Record Pro 7, and it records at a higher bit rate than voice memo.
Oh wow.
If you're using the Apple headphones that have the built-in mic, honestly, that sounds just as good as me talking. As far as voice is concerned, it sounds just as good as me talking on this blue microphone hooked into my laptop.
Damn.
It's and obviously I do a little bit of post-production, but I mean, it's still, it sounds great. Anyone can do a podcast from your phone. You don't even, I mean, with technology, you don't even need a computer to get it onto iTunes these days. SoundCloud does it all for you if you want to go that route. I don't think there's any reason, and we're past, for you guys listening to this, we're past International Podcast Day. So if you didn't do it, fuck the fuck up and do it now, because I think it's important. And I know I sound like Kevin Smith saying it, but like fucking, he has a point. Like, I think everyone should be doing a podcast because everyone has a story. I know people that listen to the show. Especially that first 20 minutes of the live Philadelphia Podcast Fest that were saying, I'm funnier than this guy. Then fucking do it. Like, just be funnier than me and record it and have fun with it. And, just do it for you. Don't do it for money, because that's the mistake I had for 8 years in podcasting, maybe 8.5,
You have something inside you that needs to get out. Like, however you choose to express that, it's important to express it. Or it'll, die. You know what I mean?
I think, I say all this stuff about podcasting, but like, I've talked to musicians, I've talked to writers, and they pretty much say the same message that I just said, but they say it about their craft.
Right.
And it's, I don't care how uncreative you think you are, you have something in you, like you just said. Like, there's, I'm not the most creative person in the world, but I for 40 weeks, I've had interesting conversations that may not have been funny, but they were interesting nonetheless. And it's, if I can, bottom line, if I can fucking do it, anyone can. Like, that's what it comes down to. All right. So, Mike, is there anything out there that you got coming up that you want to plug?
I just want to, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a fucking pleasure. Just Doom Thugs podcast. Search for us on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever. We come out every Monday, late Sunday night, if you're, an insider and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter at Doom Thugs, Instagram at Doom Thugs, Facebook, Doom Thugs Podcasts, and we update all that shit weekly and have fun stuff on there. But mostly, the most important thing is the podcast, to subscribe and like and all that shit and comment the people, stuff podcasters tell you to do to their podcast, do to our podcast. So.
Yep. Like I'm about to tell you, make sure you go to us on iTunes while you're subscribing to Doom Thugs and writing them a 5-star review.
5-star.
5-star reviews. You got to leave that. iTunes math is complicated. It only likes 5s. Make sure you do that for Everything Is Awesome. Subscribe, leave a 5-star review. It helps with the iTunes math, makes more people listen to the show. More people that listen to Everything Is Awesome. More people that listen to Doom Thugs. The more things we can do, like live shows. Like I couldn't have done the Philadelphia Podcast Fest without the help of being able to get an interview with Erin McGathy, which wasn't going to happen without having a listenership, Yeah. So, despite how small it is or whatever, like it's everything helps. And that 5-star review is actually probably one of the most important things you can do for a podcast. And I implore you to do it for Doom Thugs, because I may have only listened to 1 or 2 episodes, but it's guys, me and my taste of podcasts. It is that show that I love. It's 3 to 4 friends sitting around talking. They play a game at some point in some of the shows, at least, and it's just a ball to listen to. I know I say this about every podcaster, but I mean it. Like it's a great podcast. I really like it. It is probably it's in my line to now binge once I'm done binging whatever I'm binging now.
Thank you.
Yeah, so do all that. Make sure you go to we just redesigned our support link on, I'm going to assume it's awesomepodcast.com/support, but go to awesomepodcast.com, click the support menu item, and we redesigned that page today to make it we redesigned it a couple months ago for you because this is coming out in a month, but it looks really nice, and give me money because it costs money to do podcasting. Patreon works real simple. You pledge a dollar amount, as little as $1, as much as you want, and I give you stuff. So you don't need to give me. I prefer you to give a 5-star review, but if you want to leave some cash or leave some of that hosting fees, I'll take it. I'll take your hard-earned money. But that just means every dollar goes back into the show to do things like the New York Comic Con show. Which we already did, so I don't know why I keep on plugging that. Come to Bridgeset Sound, November 17th, 2016 on South Street. Mike, thank you for doing the show.
Thank you, Kev. This was seriously so fun.
Yes, and as I do with all my guests, anytime you want to come back on, just let me know.
Oh yeah, dude, you gotta come. You gotta be on Doom Thugs.
Oh yeah, I will. And I'm because I have kids. I tend to do A, because I have kids. B, because I do it in a shed. I tend to do all my interviews remote. But yeah, I will. Let me know the day and the time, and I will come down and do Doom Thugs in a heartbeat. I'm a podcast whore. Yeah, I will. Yeah, me too. I actually had this conversation, and I'll leave on this note. I had this conversation with somebody, and this is nothing against anyone that's ever said no to me, from Jason Jason T, to Kevin Smith or whoever who has not said no to me, or has said no to me, or who has not gotten back to me. My goal is, if anyone ever asks me to be on a podcast, I will at least get back to you, and I will say yes. It might be a yes if or a yes when I can do it. But and obviously I'm nobody right now, but if I ever become of some sort of level of fame where it's hard to schedule those things, I will always try my best to be a guest on someone's podcast, because A, I love it, and B, I know how much it means to get someone that you really want to talk to on your podcast, and to get that no, or to not get a response. That's to not get a response is the worst.
Yeah.
So I will always try my best to respond. I will always try my best to say yes. That is me saying this on air, so I got to stick to it, because you can prove it. You can say I'm a big old dick if I don't do it now. So, all right, Mike, thanks you once again. Make sure you check out Doom Thugs, the podcast, on doomthugs.com. Subscribe, leave 5-star reviews, do all that fun stuff. Look at their whole site. If they're asking you for money, give them money. $1 a month ain't much. Me and Too Cool for Tabletop, we say it all the time. $12 a year, bro. That's all it is. $12 a year. That pays for a lot. You would not even understand. For Everything Is Awesome, I'm your host, Kev, and you've been listening to us. Well, you can find the show on Twitter at RealAwesomePod. You can find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. For Everything Is Awesome, I'm Kev. You can find us right here on awesomepodcast.com.